Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Hot Science Stories. What is up? Hi, Geraldine.
Hey girl,
Excuse me. Hello, Dr. Geraldine.
is it getting hot in here?
Oh, it must be. I
I
mean,
hope
there's
so.
series popping out, so I would hope so. Hello, everyone, all of the viewers. Welcome to Hot Science Stories. My name is Anika Harriet. I am a PhD candidate at the University of Maryland School of Medicine, and I'm the Chief of Community Development here at Vanguard STEM. Today, I am joined by the lovely Dr. Geraldine Ezeka. Do you want to introduce yourself, Geraldine?
Of course, thank you so much. Shout out to the amazing almost Dr. Anika Harriet. My name is Dr. Geraldine Ezeka. I'm a recent PhD graduate from the University of Maryland, Baltimore. I just got my PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology. So I'm so excited to be here. And I'm also the social media coordinator for Vanguard STEM.
It is so lovely to be here today. I'm so excited to hear these stories. So, I want to give a little bit of background and some information for those who may not know or may not be familiar with Vanguard STEM. So, if you somehow showed up here and you have no idea what Vanguard STEM is a nonprofit, or excuse me, we are the signature program of the nonprofit from the STEM and Root to Change Foundation, or the SeRCH Foundation. We are an online community and platform that centers the experiences of women and non-binary people of color in STEM. We publish original and curated content to include a multiplicity of identities as worthy of recognition, acknowledgement of their expertise, as well as their lived experiences in STEM. And so we do a lot of programming around all of that. And the program that we're here to celebrate today is Hot Science Summer. Geraldine, do you want to tell us a little bit about Hot Science Summer?
I would love to. So, Hot Science Summer was our way to revolutionize the way that science funding exists, right? Normally, when you want to get your science funded, you go through all of these different mediums. You have to write a really long, extensive grant. But we wanted to break down those barriers and allow people to do their science their way. So, we partnered up with experiment.com and allowed for crowdfunding for science research. And we got $50,000 and we gave it all away to STEM creatives of all different stages and ages so they could do their science. And we really wanted to center their identity in the science that they were doing.
Yes, I am so excited to share with you just the multiplicity of projects that we were able to fund for Hot Science Summer.
Yeah.
Just a reminder that you guys are able to engage with us. You can tweet us at Vanguard STEM. You can leave a comment in the chat. We'll be responding to comments and questions live on air throughout, and we'll also be answering questions from or about the stories as well. So definitely participate if you're out there in the virtual ether watching us today.
Yes. And I almost forgot to mention that all of the stories, all of the people that submitted and got their Hot Science Summer projects in included in our Hot Science set, they're all women and non-binary people of color in STEM. It's giving impact.
Truly. But we do have one more thing that we'd like to share with you all before we get started in these stories, and that's our rules of community engagement. Here at Vanguard STEM, we don't play, okay? We don't want any of the isms or the phobias or any of that in our spaces. And so we start off every event that we do by showing these community guidelines that we've established here and letting you all know that if you don't adhere to them, we will use that block button freely. All right, so we're gonna start with our first storyteller for today. Who is our first storyteller, Geraldine?
First up, we have the incredible Shaquilla Hamlet. Shaquilla Hamlet is a master's student studying marine biology at Nova Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. She's always been fascinated by what most would consider strange animals. Her interests led her to various experiences involving rehabilitation and conservation of animals, ranging from domestics to exotics, including raptors and reptiles. I'm not gonna lie, I like a little bit of snakes, but raptors too? Wow. When she learned about octopus, she found it interesting that these brilliant animals only live to be 2 years old at most. Interesting. Further, she was able to further, led by her curiosities, she delved into the world of invertebrates, where her current research is focused. Thank you so much for joining us, Shaquilla. Thank you so much for doing this work. We're so excited to learn all about it. You're muted, Anika.
You'd think after 3 years in this pandemic, that I would have figured it out. And after how long of doing this show? So we're joined by Shaquilla. Hello, Shaquilla. We are going to screen your story, and we're so excited to share your experience with our audience today. So you can definitely say hello to everyone out there.
Hi, guys.
And for our audience out there, pay attention. We'll be taking questions and comments from the audience. Leave them as you watch. Respond to what you're hearing. We are here to share in this moment with you and to share these stories from these incredible, what we call STEM creatives. All right, so let's get to it.
I've always been a person who wanted to understand why an animal behaved a certain way. How did it develop, and could it be changed?
You're muted again.
There we go. Again. The audio does not seem to be working here, so I'm going to get that figured out. But in the meantime, Shaquilla, can you tell us a little bit about your project and sort of the interest there? I know that folks were really excited to be able to support a project that was about cephalopods. And I, for one, have no idea what cephalopods and spatial memory have in common. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that while we sort out the sound issues on this end.
Yeah, sure. So like you said, my project's on cephalopods, so most specifically octopus themselves. And basically when I say spatial learning or memory or things like that, it's basically can they go through an area and be able to navigate it and be able to say, hey, I remember this spot. I was here yesterday or last week, and they still be able to remember that. And that's kind of the basis of what I was hoping to show with baby octopus. Because we see it with large octopus all the time. They'll travel thousands of miles from their home dens, and then they'll go straight back home, no problem. And they'll say, hey, yesterday I was at that spot, I already hunted there. I'm gonna go to a different spot today. So I just wanted to show babies could do it too.
So I thought your project was so interesting. Also, I literally did not know that octopi only live at most to 2 years old. So that in and of itself was really an interesting fact. I thought it was really interesting how when you tried to get these baby octopus to go through this course, they didn't want to. They were like, I see what you're trying to do. It's not for me. No. How did that impact the rest of your research?
Oh my gosh, it was first mind-blowing because I was like, of course, you hope they'll do what you want them to do. You're not expecting them to refuse. But I'm like, all right, what do I do now kind of thing? Like, why don't you want to participate in my project? So it was more of like, okay, what do you want to do? So
Yeah.
Everything else I designed from there was like based off what they had already been doing the whole project.
Wow, it's almost like they were like, I know you thought you were going to be designing this project, but it's actually me that's going to be designing this project for
Exactly.
you. Try again. It just really kind of speaks to how kind of like finicky any live organism or any live type of cell that you might work with in research really acts all the time.
Definitely.
All right, so it looks like we've got the sound figured out. So we're gonna go ahead and move forward with this wonderful story by Shaquilla.
Yay.
I've always been a person who wanted to understand why an animal behaved a certain way. How did it develop, and could it be changed? I was drawn to the most non-traditional animals that were considered weird or creepy when I asked these questions because they were the ones that never behaved the way you expected. So while some would go straight for the dogs and cats, I was the one picking up frogs and playing with possums. I sought out things that hadn't really been examined by others because I had questions about that which hadn't been found. And how do you discover something new if you do what everyone else is doing? The mindset followed me into my master's. In a school dominated by core research, I had questions about cephalopods and octopus cognition of all things. For those who are not familiar, cephalopods include octopus, squid, cuttlefish, and the shelled nautilus. I was specifically curious about why octopus were considered so smart, but only lived to be around 2 years old. I wanted to know more, and so I became one of only 2 people in the state doing octopus research. The other focused more on the field side, but I wanted to show that even juvenile octopus were smart. How? Well, I suggested that if I created 3 different environments made with 3D printed rocks, that roughly 3-month-old octos would not only be able to tell them apart, but be able to remember them after weeks of not seeing it. I wanted to make sure all the octos were the same age. And since the younger they were, the more affordable they were, that meant I was going to raise hatchlings. Boy, was I in for a ride. Choosing this project placed me in a more challenging position. My advisor didn't knock down the idea, but warned me that I would need to find my own funding. He also didn't have any knowledge about my research topic or chosen animal, so he encouraged me to find people who did. Of course, that meant the only other octopus researcher in the area joined my team, as well as 2 behaviorists. Next, I had to figure out funding and location. Starting a new project that was on the expensive side during a pandemic, probably not the best idea, but I persevered, determined to get these hatchlings. But while I applied for grant after grant, the other issue of location was debated. Our school wasn't equipped to hold octopus. I spent months researching equipment and trying to adapt the supplies we already had. Plus, I wanted a species that would be less likely to climb out and run off, hopefully. I got the funding, thanks to Hot Science Summer and another grant, and I set up the tanks. I chose the California 2-spotted octopus, or the BIPOC octopus, because this was a species that hadn't been studied as regularly. They stayed on the small side, and they attempted to escape less than other species. Then I waited anxiously for them to arrive. The first 3 months of having the 12 hatchlings were the most interesting of my entire research project. When they did come in, they came in this giant brown box, and I'm almost jumping up and down, imagining an octopus a little bit smaller than my palm as I carry this heavy box to the lab. But then I opened this giant box, and I'm like, where are the octopus? I'm searching and searching through the water inside, and then I realized I've made a mistake. I pull out 12 glass tubes, and within them are these hatchlings barely the size of my fingernail. My first reaction is, wow, I have octopus. Then I didn't know they could be so small. And suddenly I'm wondering if all the precautions of covering the pipes and tanks with mesh would even work. Were they small enough to slip right through? Having no bones, octopus can slip right through any hole that their beaks can squeeze through. Here were 12 hatchlings with beaks probably the size of the tip of a pencil. Praying for the best, they went into the tanks anyway. I quickly learned that each octo had their own personality. Octo 1 was known for doing this backward dance whenever he didn't want to eat. It would swim backwards with its 2 arms arched in front of its body. Octo 2 was shy. It would often ink if you moved too quickly. But somehow, it never learned that it was supposed to swim in the opposite direction when it did so. So you would watch the ink flowing in the water and then glance back to see the hatchling was still where you last saw it. Octo 4 showed me that it wasn't interesting in socializing by virtually melting into the substrate. Talk about camouflaging. Of course, this wasn't going to be the only time the octos shocked me with their unexpected behaviors. I remember one of these lessons vividly. Twice a day for the last several weeks, I had come into lab to check in and feed the 12 baby octopus living there. I've gotten used to walking in and scrunching my nose at the smell of salt and ghost shrimp. You learn very quickly that shrimp are stinky, dirty creatures, both alive and day-old ones. I also always found myself listening for abnormal sounds. Today, it was just the normal hum from the pump that pumped clean water back into the pipes and the water splashing into the tanks themselves. Excited to see the octos, I started the process of checking each of the 6 tanks that were separated into 2 by a black barrier. This sometimes took a while, since these aquariums were about 30 gallons and the hatchlings were still the size of a pencil eraser. I lifted pots to peek underneath or check the plants for their small brown forms. It was always a wonder when I spotted them because, wow, I did have 12 of one of the most amazing creatures in the world. But nothing was scarier than when I couldn't find them. This was one of those days. Octo 3 was missing. I instantly went into a panic mode, my imagination running wild. What if it had climbed out or was trapped in the filtration pipes? Would I walk in later to see octopus wandering around the lab? These were the thoughts flashing through my mind as I wandered to the other side of the aquarium to check on Octo 4. And then my heart was stopping again because there was Octo 3 and 4 sitting next to each other. This wasn't supposed to happen. Octopus usually attack each other. So I ran to grab a cup and I scooped up Octo 3 to place him back on his side. Phew, crisis averted, right? Well, thinking it was over, I forgot all about it. Until another day in the lab showed the same thing, now with Octo 11 and 12. How were they getting past the barrier? Why weren't they attacking each other? My answer to the first question came as I tongue-fed Octo 4 its strength. It took the food, but then it slid its body between the barrier and the aquarium glass to eat on Octo 3's side. Too shocked to stop it, I just watched and wondered. None of the incidents had showed injuries to the hatchlings. So, the next day, all the barriers were removed. Who was I to keep octopus siblings from each other? Now I came into this project with all of these questions and expectations. I listed out my hypotheses and I went in thinking, I'm going to make some major scientific breakthroughs. Maybe I'll be famous, probably not. But I was excited to answer all the questions I had about whether young octopus could learn complex environments and if they had better memory than we did. Could they be taught to recognize different cues? But then they started dying one by one. I was confused. The octos would be fine the previous day. They'll be eating and interacting with us. And then the next day, they were upside down and unresponsive. And there was no clear reason why. Suddenly, my experiments were over, and yet I had new questions. I had realized during my readings that most studies focused on the same species across cephalopods, leaving a large gap of knowledge to fill. There wasn't really any research to explain what could have occurred, and it made me curious. I've thoroughly enjoyed raising a baby octopus despite the challenges. And if I was to continue my research in the future, I would love to focus in on the medical side. Maybe create a method for better observing octopus of this size. Overall, this project has taught me to always expect the unexpected in research, especially with studying animal behavior. It may never go as planned, but when things go awry, that's when we truly learn. Thank you very much.
Wow, 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 wow. That was so good. Oh my goodness. So many feels. So my literal heart, okay? When you said that we lost the octopus, oh, I'm gonna shed a couple tears.
Truly, those anxious tears. Just the one.
Just the one.
Just one hangs
down.
down.
Yep. To the fallen octopus.
You know, I really loved your story, and I felt like it highlighted sort of that thing that we all know about science, but it's a lot harder when you're confronted with it, and that's when things don't go the way that you expect. But one thing that you really touched on at the end that we all learn in those moments is that sometimes those new questions that you come up with in those moments when things don't work out can spur a lot more discovery.
Yeah.
So I'll just say before we continue on for another minute or two with this conversation, if you are out there in the chat, in the live chat, definitely leave your questions or comments. I see some, mostly just people really are interested in octopuses. So thank you so much for joining us, Shaquilla. I just want to say that it was an honor to be able to support you and your work, and that we will continue to do so. Definitely listen in. We're going to be making an announcement later on in the stream that is relevant to all of the Hot Science set, and how we can continue to support you all in your future endeavors. But I do think that's all for now. And as you sign off from this live stream, again, we'll have folks leaving comments and questions in the chat. So if you see anything there, for those in the chat too, stay around and you can continue to ask your questions there. We'll respond to them as they come.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. It's been an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Oh,
what a STEM creative.
yay. I know, STEM creative. So we've been saying that word a lot. And if I'm not mistaken, that's actually a term that you coined last summer. Can you tell us a little bit about what a STEM creative means? Who is a STEM creative?
Yeah, anybody that is interested in science at all and has a creative question to ask about it is a STEM creative. You don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to have a degree. You just have to be curious. And the reason that we wanted to coin this term STEM creative is to really kind of encourage people that anyone can be interested in science. You don't have to have the necessary background. You don't even have to consider yourself a scientist. And we just wanted to make science so inclusive that we wanted a term that anyone felt like they could use to name themselves, which is how STEM creative was really built. You're all scientists, let's be real, all scientists are creatives. If you're developing an experiment and you're asking these questions, you have to have some sort of level of creativity to come up with it, because it's not just falling out of the sky, unless, you study rain.
Or, you're one of those guys like Newton, just the ideas just fall on your head.
Right, or unless you're under an apple tree.
Exactly. So we're going to bring up our next STEM creative, and that is Rachel Neary. Rachel Neary's project is one that's a little different from the rest. Rachel is an astronomy person. So Rachel is an undergrad studying physics with a certificate in quantum information and a minor in English at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. She first fell in love with the night sky when she was just 6 years old and has stuck with it ever since. Rachel had her first research experience in astronomy last summer I guess this would be 2 summers ago now, because we got that hot science summer in the mix. 2 summers ago with the Latino Initiative program at the Center of Astrophysics at Harvard and the Smithsonian, which led her to learning and classifying this is not my field, pulsating luminous evolved stars called RV Tauri variable stars. Getting to learn what it means to be an astronomer and having hands-on experiences has been a critical part of Rachel's evolution as a scientist. Rachel, we're so excited to have you here and to share your story with our entire community.
I'm happy to be here. I'm excited. Thank you.
Yeah, we were happy to be able to help support you like always. Geraldine, do you have anything to add to this? I know we were all really interested in all of the projects that came across Hot Science Set.
This one was a really interesting project, mostly because I have no idea. I have so little knowledge about astronomy. When I was reading when I was going through your project and reading through it, Anika had to correct me. She's our resident, not really an astronomer, but low-key an astronaut. So she was correcting me and everything. And I was just like, oh, wow, this is so interesting. I was like Googling RV Tauri stars because I didn't know what that was. And I was like, this is so cool. How did you get into this? How did you go from loving and looking at stars to being like, you know what? I'm going to go study astrophysics.
I was like 6 and I decided I wanted to know what made the universe tick. And I got my hand on every astronomy book I could at the library, everywhere that there was an astronomy book or people were talking about astronomy, I would be there. Astronomy led me to physics and I literally just never gave up on it. And that's how I eventually got that internship at school, it's not my school, but at Chance, I just applied for it. I hope for the best. And that's how I got that internship. And I didn't know anything about arbitrary variable stars either, but I wanted to learn about it. And so yeah, that's how I got into it.
Can you talk a little bit about how your experience has been being a Black woman in this astrophysics field in astronomy? Because you said something that I thought was interesting. You stuck with it. And it seems like a lot of times it may be difficult for women in STEM, regardless of whatever the specialty, to kind of stick with it. So can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah. So as a kid, I didn't really have too many challenges about it. As I got older, especially like in high school, college, it became a lot harder. People doubted me a lot, or said I couldn't do it, or said like, yeah, you should do something else, especially in college. I like transferred schools a few times because of it. It was just getting to an extreme point where I just couldn't deal with it anymore. But it's really finding the people that support you and that you know will help guide you and that you can trust in, that really helped me to like not give up on that, because it becomes really discouraging and really like heartbreaking at some point, because like it shouldn't matter about your gender, it shouldn't matter about your race, it should matter about what you're interested in, what you want to do. So yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you persevered, because now you are literally someone else's light at the end of the tunnel. You are literally someone else's inspiration, another little Black girl's inspiration to become an astronomer, an astrophysicist. So I'm glad that you persisted, and I'm glad that you stuck with it. And I'm really excited to watch your story.
All right, so without another moment's hesitation, let's get right into it.
When I was 6 years old, I went outside with my dad and my siblings late at night and played with them in our backyard. I looked up into the sky out of curiosity and I noted these three things, which are very profound, and I still don't know why a 6-year-old would have these thoughts, but these three things are the first things that came to mind. First is that our ancestors are connected to us through the night sky, since it's the same one that they looked up into. Second is that it's completely natural and untouched, unlike the earth that is in grasp to us. The third is, and this is what sold me, is what makes the universe tick. That last thought is what drove me to my obsession and love for astronomy. I read everything I could about astronomy that I could find. And once I was done with the kids section in the library, I went to the adult section and read everything I could on astronomy and physics. I didn't understand the math, but I understood the concepts as much as I could. And I'd always tell everyone that I'd be an astronomer, astrophysicist, or physicist, or scientist in some way. I didn't know how bad it was until I bumped into people when I got older, and they'd ask me, "Are you still doing astronomy?" And I was like, "Yeah." "Why?" They're like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah." "Why?" I'm like, "It wasn't that bad." I'm like, "Yeah, it was that bad." They're like, "Oh." I was like, "Oh, well, what are you gonna do?" And I even got my first telescope when I was 12 as a gift. My brother and I built it together. It's right here. And I even had these astronomy books that I'd look up the constellations and star maps and all of that, and to match it with the hemisphere and the season, to see what we could see with the constellation and the constellation stars and planets and such. But the first time I saw a clear night without pollution was when I was in Haiti visiting family in 2014. I fell in love with the night sky all over again, because it was awing to see the sky without pollution and see it in a way that I hadn't before. In college, I applied to this internship last year in 2021 with the Latino Initiative program at the CFA with the Harvard Smithsonian. I didn't think I'd get in, but when I did, I was ecstatic, but also imposter syndrome knocked on my door, opened it, and entered in. I almost rejected the internship, but if it weren't for my friend, I wouldn't be here doing it. She also got into the internship, and she was a friend that I had at a school prior to this one that I transferred out of. But she passed away after she was accepted into it. And I thought to myself, who am I to reject this internship when she was ecstatic to do it? And she'll never have the chance to now. So I did it for the both of us. And I wore this t-shirt every week when the interns and I would all come together so it could feel like she was there experiencing it with us. Now my project includes, now why did I pick this project in general? I picked it because I knew nothing about arbitrary variable stars and variable stars in general. Well, my knowledge was limited. I knew things about it. My knowledge was just limited. And I wanted to learn more about it since I love learning things that I don't know anything about. Also, I thought working with my research advisor would be pretty cool and it would be a good match. And that was great for both because I love working with him and it's been great working with him since. My project is about these large luminous evolved stars called arbitrary variable stars. They're these pulsating red stars in their red giant phase, and they're interesting because they're very short-lived. Variable stars typically live billions of years, while these stars specifically live hundreds of thousands. And because of how short-lived they are, they're typically misclassified. Now, this started in the 50s or 60s, the misclassification of them. This leads to the lack of understanding for stellar evolution and people having wrong data. So my project is to properly classify them so we can better understand stellar evolution and people can have the data for what they choose to use it for later in the future with modern technology aiding us. My trip to Nantucket to use the Mariah Mitchell Observatory was delayed to March 2022 because of the pandemic and because of winter and I was in school. But I wasn't too upset about the delays because I knew it was going to happen at some point. Originally, before we went there, we had to pick out targets to see which ones are arbitrary variable stars, which ones aren't, and which ones ours we don't really know, so we would be checking them. The first time out, we got clouded out, but it was still an amazing experience. I got to use the reflecting telescope and the refracting telescope, and I got to use the telescope, move the telescope around the dome. I got to open the dome. I saw how people would use it and just seeing the mechanisms of it. I felt like a little kid again. I almost felt like running around the dome at some point. I almost even cried tears of joy. I didn't because there were people there, but I was very close and I could feel my eyes welling up with tears of how joyous I was and how in awe I was of the whole thing. It was a humbling experience. It felt like I was walking in the steps of giants and it felt exciting because it felt like my 6-year-old self was seeing her dream become a reality. At that moment, I wanted others to have that feeling too. Like, wow, this isn't a dream anymore. This is really happening, no matter what aspiration or dream or goal that they have. To really feel and see it become a thing of reality is such a beautiful feeling. And I want others to feel that too, just genuine joy. I felt grateful that I didn't give up despite the odds, despite the imposter syndrome, despite other things. We even got to see 2 or 3 moonbows that night. And I don't think I'd seen one since I was 12, when I was starting to learn what the terms astronomer, astrophysicist, and physicists were. So it felt like a confirmation of some sort. It made me want to know more about the night sky and what made the universe tick. I wanted others to feel that opportunity to see the beauty in whatever they love and want to do. But it also made me think about the amount of people who had given up on their dream and it would have made a difference to have that type of experience in their life of like, yeah, this is really happening. It's not a dream anymore. This can happen and it's real for me. As I got older, I also thought of the universe as art on a tapestry. And that night I saw it not just art, but something philosophical and profound, that it was just being shaped in my mind in a different way. It was just so humbling. It was just a very humbling experience. And 6-year-old Rachel knew what she was talking about at that time. And a lot of physicists at school and astrophysicists in general have told me everything is connected, and I never really understood it. But that night, having that experience, those nights having those experiences, truly made me understand what they were telling me, that everything is connected. I could go on, but I might be rambling at this point. I can't wait to do another observation run soon, late August, and deepen my interest and make me fall in love with the night sky, and hopefully a clear observing night, so I can witness the art of the untouched tapestry all over again. Thank you. And thank you for everything. See you soon.
Wow. Okay. Ooh, Rachel, you got us all.
In the feels.
The chat is just, we're all crying.
Literally.
Yes. You know, we received these stories in advance, and I pre-screened them just enough to kind of know what order we wanted to put them in. But this is actually my first time seeing everyone's story all the way through, beginning to end. And, you know, there were just so many things throughout your story that were so profound that I feel like, you know, come with just the profession of someone who really has every opportunity to take in the entire universe, so to speak. And I think maybe my favorite line from your story was that the night sky that we look up at connects us to our ancestors, because it's the same one that they were looking up at. That one really
hit different.
Yeah. Geraldine, what about you? What part of the story really stuck out to you?
I think one of my favorite parts was when you were able to look at, I'm not going to lie, I don't remember the exact term, but it was something that you had saw when you were 12 years old that you were able to see again, and you were able to express genuine joy for being able to see this thing in the nighttime sky. And it just kind of encouraged you to continue not giving up on your dream. I feel so encouraged to have heard you have that experience. And I'm just hoping that everyone watching this also has that kind of encouragement, because wow, that genuine joy for having a discovery, that is so cool. And I think that's what really gets people so excited about science. So I think that that's awesome.
Yeah, Rachel, you know, you thanked us for what we were able to do to support you, but truly thank you for trusting us with your science and your story.
Do I say you're welcome at this point?
You don't have to. I just wanted you to know that we are equally grateful for you, for your persistence and your presence.
Yeah, you belong in astronomy regardless of what anybody tells you. I just wanted us to tell you too.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't listen to the haters.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's always more where they came from.
That's true, but you belong.
Truly. So with that, we'll let you sign off. Please feel free again to join us in the live chat on YouTube after you're signed off. And again, stay tuned. We'll have an announcement in just a little bit about some other ways that we're hoping to be able to support the Hot Science set.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, and you're welcome. I'll say it. Geraldine, so next we have a story from someone who unfortunately is not able to join us live. Can you tell us a little bit about our next member of the Hot Science set?
Okay, so while all of our Hot Science set are incredible, amazingly just talented beings, this next member has a special place in my heart because she's based in and conducted her research in my motherland, Nigeria. So let's give a huge shout out to Lucy Umebi. Lucy is a soil scientist interested in environmental soil science research. Her passion in environmental soil science Research initiated when she visited Southeast Nigeria and noted that most of the agricultural lands were often polluted by contaminants. During undergrad, she researched anthropogenic activities and their effects on soil quality and the ecosystem. Let's learn about how to protect our soils. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for your work, Lucy.
So we're actually going to have two stories back to back. We'll bring on our next guest, but quick spoiler, we're going to have two stories, both actually with reference to Nigeria, and both that have a little bit of talk about soil. So we're going to start off with Lucy, and then we're going to move right into introducing our next scientist afterwards. But for all of those who are viewing live, Lucy is in the live chat right now, despite not being able to join us live on video. So please leave your questions, comments, reactions, insights, etc. in the chat, and Lucy will be there to respond.
I've always been curious about the growth of crops whenever I visited my parents' farm. I'll be like, what is it in the soil that makes the plants grow? This inspired my interest in choosing soil science as a course of study in the university, where I was exposed to soil physical properties, chemical properties, biological properties, and their functions and how they affect agriculture and the environment. During my 4-day internship, I visited different research institutes and farms in Nigeria. On this trip, I learned about different kinds of soil, and I was curious about the anthropogenic activities' impact on the soil. That made me carry out a research in my final year which focused on impact of grazing and farming on soil physical properties as well as chemical properties. From my research findings, I understood that grazing and farming can influence the soil physical and chemical fertility. From further research and studies, I understood also that anthropogenic activities such as mining can also add toxic elements to the soil. And these activities are carried out in states like Enugu, Zamfara, Ebonyi State. Ebonyi State is within the same region where my university is located. So I decided to embark on a recognizant visit to the state. On getting to the site, I saw evidence of soil degradation. The soil vegetation cover were completely removed, and the water in the valley were consciously used for different purposes. The soil and the parent work were massively mixed. At this stage, I became more curious to understand the level of land degradation through getting the necessary documents for authorization to work in the site as a scientist and not as a miner. So during the wet season, I collected soil samples from the surface and profile pits, as well as plants, all from the mine surroundings and the control surroundings. And during the dry season, I went back to the field to collect water samples from the different sources of water used in the community. I also carried out respondent survey. This field work was assisted by about 5 indigenes from the community and about 4 non-indigene who are not residents in the community. All this assistance made me achieve my sampling of soil, water, and plants, as well as the respondent survey without much hindrance, despite the initial challenges I encountered when I visited the communities. My research findings showed that the soil from the mine surroundings were highly contaminated because they had high level of potential toxic elements such as lead, arsenic, chromium. These elements can cause cancerous diseases when they are exposed in the environment beyond the permissible limit. And the observation was significant compared to the soil collected from the control site. The young maize plants from the mine surrounding also had high level of this potential toxic elements beyond the permissible limits required for a soil cultivated in an uncontaminated soil. The water from the surface and underground also had high level of this potential toxic elements, indicating poor water quality, and it poses a huge risk in the community. From the respondents' survey, which was carried out with the help of questionnaire, the results showed that about 71% of the people agreed that children drowning in the tunnel dug during the mining activity is a major consequence. And about 77% of them agreed that structures do crack during mining activities, which usually lead to complete collapse of the buildings. About 80% of the respondents affirmed that mining activity affects their soil, which usually leads to reduction in agricultural productivity, and as well as make their water unfit for use. This made me worried, but I must agree that this is an eye-opening and a wonderful experience for me. From my journey in understanding the wonders of the soil, my journey into soil science, and finally understanding the impact of mining activity on soil and water and how it affects agriculture and the environment. At this stage, I believe that understanding the strategy to reclaim this contaminated soil and water will help to improve the environmental health for all. The success I have made is a huge boost to my self-esteem and an inspiration for the women in the world. This will leave a positive impression on both men and women in the world. This will also help people to understand that both men and women can carry out research in STEM in difficult terrain. I am glad and proud to be at the inaugural Hot Science Set of Vanguard STEM. Thank you.
Wow, what honestly universal research, understanding how mining affects, how agronomic activities in general affect soil, so important to every country, really. That could be applied in Nigeria, that could be applied to farmers here and agricultural folks here. So that's such important research.
Truly. And I really loved the community-centered focus of this project. I feel like that really captured the spirit of what Hot Science Summer is all about. So not only was Hot Science Summer for us about supporting scientists who might be overlooked or considered high risk by other funding mechanisms, but it was all centered around community. We did community-centered crowdfunding in addition to the $50,000 that we gave away. And that's also why we wanted to host this as Hot Science Stories, because Geraldine and I have a lot of experience sitting through symposiums, and they're not exactly community friendly, shall we say. And we really thought that we wanted to acknowledge the communities and the folks who may not necessarily be STEM practitioners, and to engage in a way that anyone, regardless of their level of science, could not only do projects in Hot Science Summer, but be engaged with all of the content around it. So next, we're bringing up another scientist who has a very community-centered focus to her project. So next we have Abua Ewoma Fike. Abua is a social scientist born and raised in Nigeria. Her passion for research stems from witnessing the long-term effects of policies on the well-being of many, many communities near and dear to her heart. She recently graduated from the Master of Public Health and Master's Social Policy programs at the Brown School at Washington University in St. Louis, supporting domestic and international public health policy and and policy research with the Social System Design Lab and Prevention Research Center. Abua believes that health is a human right, and she's passionate about applying systems thinking to policies and partnerships, which will help to move forward in positive health for particularly low resource communities. So in just a moment, we'll be joined by Abua, and we are very excited to be sharing her story with you today as well. Geraldine, we've got another one for you.
I know. I'm not gonna lie. All of the Nigerians here doing research really pulls at my heartstrings. So I'm just so excited. Thank you for joining us, Abua. Oh, your microphone is muted.
All right. I think we're going to jump right into the story, and then we're going to again have questions, comments, whatnot from the audience. We'll have our own commentary, as we always do, as it goes as well. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Abua. You're muted.
Oh, got it.
Right.
I'm muted now.
We're going to jump right into the story, and then we're going to again have questions,
All right, let's go.
whatnot from the audience. We'll have our own commentary.
Tell me, do you know how your food is grown? I was born and raised in Nigeria, and some of my earliest memories are of growing green things, rooting beneath the soil with my mother, handing her a wooden stake to support a yam seedling. She would tell us stories about growing up on the fertile banks of the River Niger, a region quite aptly named the food basket of the nation, about the spirits of the earth that lived on farms, about friends and family helping in the harvest, working the land their families had owned for generations, about children handing out the harvest baskets to their clanspeople as they rose with the birds at the crack of dawn. She would tell us about gathering with other children to sit under the shade and watch the harvest. Children of all ages, siblings, cousins, neighbors, fed together, watching and waiting and hearing stories about the earth and caring for it to care for themselves. I moved to the US a few years ago, and one of the first things I realized is that soil is the same everywhere you go. It seems like a small thing, I know. But soil wraps around the world like a big blanket. It springs beneath our feet. It feeds us, it supports our buildings, it supports our dreams. The second thing I realized is that people who grow things tend to think in similar ways. You seek the soil when the sun is asleep and you place your seeds. You water and watch and wait, and soon enough, you harvest. But there are differences too. Very few people, at least in the cities I've lived here, know where food is grown, and most importantly, to me anyway, how food is grown. You see, in the US, many children work on farms as child farm workers, on farms their families do not own. Childcare is the exception and not the norm for farm work. And for these children, all there is to do is work with the soil, exposed to the same dangers that adults encounter. The same health problems also ensue, and there are long-term consequences for education and well-being as well. The same soil that I had always thought of nurturing and kind to children in Nigeria is synonymous with labor for children in the US. I started digging, reading anything I could find about US child farm work, about how agriculture is regulated, the laws and policies that protect some children but not others. I didn't know what to do with this information. What could any one person do? There I was, learning about a new country, earning a living and figuring out grad school all at the same time. And then it hit me. Do something what you have, Abua. Everything I'd learned through work experience and grad school made it clear that complex problems require policy solutions. I brainstormed with a few friends, and the Translating Evidence to Care for Child Farm Workers project was born. The goal was simple. Figure out a way to move years of child farm work research into policy action. You see, many of the laws that govern agriculture and child labor and participation have not been changed for over 60 years, in spite of many, many years and many groups engaged in advocacy. Of course, this is easier said than done. We started off with so much joy and so much verve, but like everything else during the COVID-19 pandemic, personal circumstances and funding issues became a brisk wake-up call. The work needed to keep going. TECCF needed to pivot. But how? Well, last fall, a new opportunity, came up. It surfaced. I was asked to design my capstone project, which is a requirement for graduation. And immediately I knew what I wanted to work on. It wasn't easy. See, pivoting the project pushed me to drill down on system dynamics modeling, which is a complexity science research method, taking on additional coursework to learn and understand the principles and how to apply these innovative techniques. And after lots of trying and testing and failing and succeeding, over time, I had developed a new intention for the articles and books and videos I'd been studying: to view agriculture in the US as a system and to understand the motivations of many actors: the child farm workers, their families, farm operators and businesses, legislators and policy regulators, and to map their interactions in a changing system over time. Last month, I turned in this project, and it's titled Reducing Childhood Agricultural Injuries in US Settings, a System Dynamics Modeling Approach. It's quite the mouthful, I know. And so for the project, I combined a quantitative analysis using 17 years of childhood agricultural injury data with a model simulating the interactions between policy regulation, farm operator retaliation, peer advocacy among children, and work conditions of farm work, and the interactions between these different engagement processes and how this impacts injury rates over time. I also designed an interactive policy experiment platform that enables anyone. It could be a member of the community, it could be a policymaker, it could be a legislator, to interact with the different tools and understand how interventions, such as following up with children who present in hospitals with injuries sustained during farm work, and how that might reduce injury rates over the next 20 years. And now I'm constantly thinking about the implications of this work. Who can access it? How might they apply it to their decision making? I'll be presenting some of these findings at the 2022 International System Dynamics Conference this summer. I'm thinking about how to carry the research into policy. I don't quite know what that might look like, but you know what? Maybe getting one person in the US to ask the next person, do you know how your food is grown? Will be enough.
Wow, I love that simple question. Do you know how your food is grown? I also love how you kind of went back to something that you knew and loved. You loved how in your family back home in Nigeria, your mom grew food in your backyard. My mom actually literally grows food in our backyard too. So I can really relate to that. And when you came here, the soil and the farming that you knew to love was not the same experience that children had. So I really think that it's amazing how you grew to love something as a child and you came here, experienced it differently, and was like, I'm here to flip the script so people can learn how to love and enjoy something that I grew to love and enjoy. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, that's a really insightful way to look at it. Thanks for pointing that out, Geraldine.
No problem.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your story. First of all, the narrative structure, the metaphors, you really went off. Truly went off there. So I just have to say that first. But yeah, similarly to Geraldine, I actually am from a family of farmers. And so this was a story that was really interesting to me to hear as well. I live in the city and I've grown up in the city, but my mom used to send me back to the farm in the summers and say that it built character. So it was really wonderful to be able to support a scientist who's looking out for those communities, and truly just to see how passionate you are about your work, from the work that you're doing to the way that you told the story, to taking that extra step to go out and share your findings and policy recommendations at, I believe you said, international scale, right? International conference?
Yeah, it's a conference this summer. It's in July. I'll be presenting the research there. So exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I also thought it was really interesting, and I kind of have a question. It seems that a lot of times the different families that have different child farm workers it's more of a familial thing, right? They own these farms and they're inviting their children to come learn how to do this farm working activities. And sometimes more or less these children, because they are children, end up getting into different accidents. So I guess my main question is, how difficult will it be? And this is probably a lofty question, but it's okay. How difficult will it be to kind of develop policies for familial-based farm workers in regulating essentially how they almost parent their kids?
Yeah, I think you're right. There's no simple answer to that question. And, farm work looks different for different families. Some families do own farms and have children, who do simple tasks. For a lot of families, they don't own that land. They themselves are farm workers, and then their children work on the farms as well because of issues with access to childcare. But you're right, the way the laws are written currently, actually, there are little caveats. So if it's a family member who owns the farm, or if they're giving consent, like, the laws are different. So it's going to have to look different for different situations. And no one knows all the answers right now. But one thing is clear, though, this is an issue that just needs a lot more attention.
We actually have a question from the audience.
Okay.
So this comes from 177 Happy on YouTube. And the question is, could you expand a bit on the difference in culture for farming that you've experienced or witnessed, I guess, across your plethora of experience?
I think the big one is just the norms around care and concern for children. There's something about sort of how you think about the land and your relationship to it, how you work on it. It's you, it's your family, it's your neighbors. You know where it's coming from. Everyone sort of has that communal experience. And it's not quite the same here. I'd say the US is really big on industrialized agriculture, which is a huge part of it. But I think that sort of care and just sort of those communal norms play a big role in those differences.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you, as I've said before, to some of the other members of the set for trusting us, not only with your science, but with your story. There are lots of questions. Well, there was the single question, but lots of comments in response to your story in the YouTube chat. So I would definitely encourage you to go check that out. And thank you once again for joining us today.
I'll take a look at that. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, Geraldine, we have just 2 stories left. Our next guests were not able to join us today, but we will have a special announcement after their story in lieu of our Q&A. But before we do that, we've never done this during a stream. You are our social media coordinator. I was once the Vanguard STEM social media coordinator. And like I said, we're down to our last two stories. So I figure, why not just make a quick little Instagram story so the folks that are out there who somehow missed the announcement to tune in to Hot Science Stories.
Can't believe it.
So yeah, let's make a quick little Instagram story so these folks can tune in to Hot Science Stories happening right
now.
It's literally happening right now on our YouTube page. And if you're watching this, go to YouTube and check it out. All right, so now
I hope they join.
Now that that's done, I hope they do too, for real.
I'm missing out on so much fun over here.
Truly. So can you give us an intro into the folks who will be telling us our next Hot Science story?
Absolutely. Next up is Gabriela Carvajal and Itzel Cifuentes Romero. Gabby is a second-generation American with a love for the ocean and nature, much like me. She's always enjoyed observing nature and asking questions, which led her to pursue a career as a conservation biologist. She's interested in answering questions that fill data gaps needed for endangered species and aid in their conservation by using applied molecular techniques. She's currently enrolled in the Integrative Biology PhD program at Florida Atlantic University. Her research focuses on identifying sea turtle nest sex ratios and developing molecular tools to allow for large-scale studies of nest sex ratios. Her partner in science is Itzel Cifuentes Romero, a postdoctoral fellow at Florida University. Her interest in sea turtles began when she was in college, where she joined a group of volunteers working in a remote beach in Mexico, her country where she was born and raised. Since then, she's always been interested in learning more and more about sea turtles, and sea turtles have actually been the primary focus of her research. During her PhD, she studied environmental sex determination, trying to learn more and more about them. I'm so excited to learn more about Itzel and Gabby's project. And unfortunately, they couldn't be here, but please ask all of your questions and make all of your comments in the YouTube chat.
All right, let's get into it. This was one of our most popular projects when we first launched Hot Science Summer, because it's about sea turtles, and I guess everybody just loves these sea turtles. We should have like some kind of competition. We'll put up a poll maybe on Twitter: octopuses versus sea turtles, because you guys are really fighting to fund these two.
Right, and I mean, cute sea animals, smartest sea animals, it's really difficult. And then they posted the most adorable images of the sea turtles that they were researching. And I was just like, oh, take my money, please.
Truly. All right, so let's get into this story that is actually a two-parter.
Back in 1996, when I was in this sea turtle camp, I was in the middle of a beach. It was pitch dark, and I remember finding myself walking in this very long beach, and it was amazing. It was so beautiful. The night was so beautiful. And then I knew that we were there to preserve and help sea turtles. But I really didn't know how this trip would be. So I remember being walking on this beach. I was getting super tired, but then all of a sudden this huge sea turtle emerged from the ocean. And it was so beautiful. I've never seen that before. And she was like struggling, coming from the ocean, finding her way on the beach, and then finding a perfect spot to lay their eggs. And I was there. I was looking at her, digging this big hole to lay her eggs. Then all of a sudden, all the eggs were there. She covered the nest, and then she was gone. And it was like, this is amazing. So it was me and the eggs. And I just totally felt that this sea turtle mama was asking me to take care of these eggs. And I think that's when everything changed, because I felt super responsible for these eggs. And I remember grabbing all the eggs and walking back to the camp, because we were supposed to putting them in this big nursery where all the eggs would be protected for poachers, because we have this big problem in Mexico. But then I remember putting all these nets together and seeing all those nests aligned all together in this nursery. And I remember, wow, this is really different from where they actually lay their eggs. And is this good or bad? I mean, I know that nobody is gonna take these eggs, but I mean, is this good or bad? I don't know. And I guess at that time, we didn't know. So this amazing sea turtle camp ended, because all the good things ends at some point. So I went back home, and I remember that it was this trip that made my mind, and I decided to study biology. So I entered college and I started taking many classes, but still in the back of my mind, it was sea turtles, because I knew that I already had a passion. But then I also found this other passion that was molecular biology. And the question was like, is there a way to put these two passions together? And I guess I did find the answer. So I finished college, I got my degree, and I moved out of my parents' house. And I went to a different city in Mexico. I started my master's. During my master's, I learned so many things, also about sea turtles. And I learned how the environment can affect the sea turtles. So the fact that the mom is leaving the eggs all by the expense of nature, it's really a big deal, because turtles, they determine their sex through temperature. That means that the temperature is the one who's gonna determine if a baby turtle is a boy or a girl. And for me, this was like really amazing. It was like, this is really, really big, because we know that climate is changing, global warming, it's a big deal right now. So what is happening? It's really a big concern now, because I mean, we know how temperatures, all the turtles are gonna become girls. So here's where my mind started thinking, so how can we know what is happening right now with these populations of sea turtles out there? Like, how many males are there? How many females are there? So we start thinking a way to knowing what is happening, what is like behind this sex determination mechanism. So during my PhD, I studied several genes that were responsible to make a turtle to become a male or a female. So we knew, we found several genes that were like different in females than in males, but still this was something that it was just kind of only a mechanism. We still needed something that let us or help us determine how or if the baby turtles were a girl or a boy, because baby turtles, you have to know, they don't have like external characteristics. You cannot tell at just looking at them if it's a boy or it's a girl. So I finished my PhD with all this knowledge. We know that there were different genes, and but I still had in mind these big questions. How can we differentiate between a boy and a baby and a girl turtle? So I moved to the US, hoping to join this big and amazing lab, Janet Weineken's lab. This is, for me, it was amazing having the opportunity to join this lab, because it was a lab with an amazing background, so many years studying sea turtle biology, and they were also studying sex ratios, meaning how many females and how many males we are producing in our beaches. So together we start working in a way to find out or to answer this big question. And we did. We finally found a protein that was present in the plasma or in the blood of males, but it wasn't present in the females. But still, we did it with a very, I would say, like time-consuming technique in the lab. It was still like a lot of equipment, a lot of time, and something that it was not practical. Something that we couldn't translate into the field to answer bigger questions, like not only how many males I have in one beach. but we wanted to know how many males and how many females we had, like in many beaches. And I think this is when we start making all these questions. And I mean, the big question now was like, how can we do this?
I grew up in New York, going to the beach and being around the ocean, and that's where I developed a love for marine biology. This led me in high school to travel to the Caribbean and learn to dive and learn about protected marine reserves. And that's where I've heard conservation, the word conservation, for the first time. And I actually got to see conservation in action, seeing areas of coral reefs that were protected versus non-protected. And I realized that that's what I wanted to study, marine conservation. Then during my undergraduate career, I traveled to Costa Rica to volunteer with sea turtles, which was my first exposure, and they were amazing. And I learned that the sex of a sea turtle is determined by the incubation temperature, and that there's no way to tell if a sea turtle is a boy or a girl. And I found that astonishing. I just couldn't believe it, that just like a simple, basic biological fact we could not know. But I put that, on the back burner of my mind. I went and got my master's in marine conservation, where I took a marine ecology course, and that also gave me a different lens to look at conservation. So I saw all these types of molecular tools and principles that you could apply to conservation. So I was like, this is what I want to study. And then after I did my master's, I actually got a job working with leatherbacks, and they stole my heart. And I kind of got brought back into the turtle world, and I decided that I wanted to do, molecular ecology and sea turtles, and finding a way to sex a male or female hatchling was a question that I'm really interested in, just a minimally invasive way. And then I read Itzel's paper, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And I want to continue this work to upscale it and make it basically a way to look at sexes at a population level. So our overall goal is to actually it's the same principle as a pregnancy test or a rapid COVID test, where we put a drop of blood out in the field, because a lot of these nesting beaches, are far away from big fancy labs. So we just put a drop on this pregnancy test, and it tells us whether it's a male or female. So that's our long-term goal. So then sea turtle biologists can use this all over the world and look at sex ratios, what they are now, and how they continue to change as temperatures increase.
Wow. Someone in the YouTube chat literally was like, I had no idea molecular ecology was a thing. And I just really love that both Itzel and Gabby were able to kind of put their passions together in molecular biology, as well as their love for sea turtles. Gabby literally said she was able to see the different lenses of researching conservation by incorporating molecular biology and conservation scientists to kind of mold her into a molecular ecologist. I love that. Kind of taking her personal, both of their experiences when Itzel was in Mexico, experiencing this different camp and research, and seeing the mother sea turtle bury her eggs and feeling like it was left to her to take care of them, to literally trying to develop a way to identify in large quantities the sex ratio of sea turtles. That's amazing.
Yeah, this was like a great back and forth kind of story. Like you said, starting with Itzel and being in, I believe she said 1997.
Yeah.
And how Gabby picked that up. But I mentioned for the folks in the hot science set out there, and at the beginning of our program, that we had an announcement for after this story. And actually, it was inspired by a comment that Gabby made in telling this story. So if you missed it, Gabby said that she saw Itzel's paper And that's what inspired her to sort of move forward in pursuing this project that we helped fund with Hot Science Summer. And if you know anything about Vanguard STEM, then you know that in addition to telling stories about the experiences of women and non-binary people of color in STEM, we are dedicated to spreading the acknowledgement of the work that they're doing in science. Hashtag cite a sister, if you know, you know. Hashtag cite Black women, cite women of color. We are often overlooked and cited less often than our peers and colleagues. And so you may have heard previously that Vanguard STEM is funded by the Wikipedia Foundation to help spread the traditional knowledges, the experiences and expertise of women of color through a variety of programming. And this that we're doing right now is part of that. But in addition to sharing these stories, we want to share the expertise behind the scientists who are telling them. And so in line with that, we want to announce that Vanguard STEM wants to help all of the scientists who are part of this Hot Science Set to publish their work. So for the scientists who are part of Hot Science Set, any publication or abstract submission that you're doing in line with your Hot Science Summer work, we're going to work with you to help you fund the submission of your work so that we can cite you.
Yes.
So we'll be in touch with the Hot Science Set about that in the near future, but we want to share that. And for those in our community out there, cite us. We will drop our first peer-reviewed journal article about all of the work that we do at Vanguard STEM and the frameworks that we work under in the chat and on Twitter. It is in all the places. If you haven't read it, read it. Cite us, cite these sisters. And we're so excited to be able to help our Hot Science Set in publishing their work and getting it out there.
Yes, it's giving first author publications. It's giving a whole bunch of Black women publishers. Wow, wow, wow. Come on, authors. Come on, scientists. Come on, STEM creatives. I love it. This is amazing. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to kind of spread everyone's publications and be like, Vanguard STEM did this.
Yes, absolutely. It's been an absolute joy to be able to do this work.
So last but not least,
it's the end of the line. It's been a good time, but we're here for a good time, not a long time. So we have to move on to our final story of the Hot Science Set today. So for our last story, we are going to be hearing from AJ Ade. AJ is a research scientist and a writer on design, ethics, and culture. She is the founder of Sula Labs, an R&D skincare lab, and an incoming chemical biology PhD student at UCLA. Okay, wait, hold on, because that's my first time hearing this. Congratulations, AJ.
Yes, AJ, congratulations. Let's go.
AJ is passionate about finding solutions for folks with dark skin tones, just like her. This is the core of her research philosophy, and I can definitely say that AJ's project is one that I care deeply about. So let's welcome AJ to the stream. Hello, AJ. How are you?
Hey, AJ.
Hey, everyone. I'm good. How are y'all?
Great. Congratulations on getting accepted to UCLA for your PhD program. You're lit.
I appreciate it.
We're so excited to see what waves you make in your industry. I'm excited to be putting something on my face. AJ did this right here, okay?
I mean, yeah, I'm excited for y'all too. Let me know if you want some free product. Actually.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely be in touch because we've talked several times about actually doing a sort of take up space, come as you are sort of beauty series with Vanguard STEM. So now we know another scientist that we can hit up when the time comes.
Yes, please.
All right. So without further ado, we're going to mute ourselves and get into our last but not least,
Never least.
story from AJ.
When I was 11 years old, I had preteen skin riddled with breakouts, and social media was finally starting to take its reign of the internet. The internet, of course, was a little different back then. There were a few key players that were starting to slowly but surely fizzle out. One of my favorite oldies but goodies was WikiHow. For some context, I was a quirky 7th grader that was dealing with all kinds of 7th grade things, including new life responsibilities, friends, crushes, and of course, my skin. So what better platform to engage with than one that had pretty much every imaginable answer that you could dream up with a quick and easy how-to step-by-step format attached? Well, I asked all kinds of 11-year-old questions, such as how to do long division with decimals, and how to get that person to like you, or how to use a curling iron. I found that a lot of my searches revolved around a thing that many preteens are concerned about: their appearance. Questions like how to make a DIY lipstick for darker skin tones, or how to get rid of dark spots for darker skin tones. In fact, I spent so much time on WikiHow searching these skin solutions for darker skin tones that I actually ended up writing a few articles that answered some questions that I personally wanted answers for, and they ended up gaining hundreds of thousands of views. And no, I will not give you my old username, only the real ones know. As I got into adulthood, I remained curious about this subject, but I didn't think it was all that important. In fact, it was definitely pushed to the back burner. And when it came time for me to go to college, I wanted an English degree or a writing degree. But my African parents were surely against this and suggested I take up something more practical, like biology, in hopes of being a doctor one day. Needless to say, that did not happen. However, what did happen was something completely unexpected. I felt so disconnected from my major, my peers, my classes, and even my passions. And it doesn't help that my college does this thing where you have to take a 6-month mandatory paid internship. So I thought I was totally screwed because I had no idea what I was doing. My parents fully expected me to apply for clinical internships because of their dreams of me becoming a doctor, so I did. I actually was offered a clinical job interacting with patients right on the spot from interviewing, and I thought I could stick it out, but it wasn't until it was actually offered to me that I knew exactly where my priorities are. I knew that I had to delve into the scientific industry somehow, but in true AJ nature, I wanted to make it creative. When it came time to search for my 6-month internship, I was keen to find a niche in the scientific industry that meant something to me, bettered the world, and employed creativity. I talked to so many people searching for so many answers. And luckily, there was one shiny internship that I wanted so badly because it checked off each box in terms of creativity and in science. And it was at a skincare company. This changed everything. So I worked at that skincare company doing design, marketing, brand partnerships, and occasionally a little bit of literature research in regards to the active ingredients for the products. I fell in love. The company's main wheelhouse was sun damage and sun protection, which spoke to me personally as a dark-skinned individual. And because it was a startup, I got to have my hand in every bucket and make key decisions, and it made me confident and fired up to take on the very industry that my 11-year-old self fell so in love with by accident. Needless to say, I graduated from college the next year, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to take on an industry that I thought loved me back. Now let's fast forward to September 14th, 2021. It was about a year since I had graduated from college. I could hear office chatter in the background that morning. I was wearing office clothes that I felt so out of place in, and my skin felt hot. In front of me was my boss at the time, asking me, "Is that all your stuff?" Because I was returning my stuff. My palms felt clammy, and I knew this was the last time that I would ever be in this particular building. That day, I was quitting my coveted postgraduate job as a dermatologic clinical researcher and cosmetic formulator at a medical-grade skincare company. My job at the time and I had, let's say, creative differences. When accepting that job, I was ready to revolutionize the skincare industry using my learnings and apply them to those with dark skin. But I learned very quickly in that first job that the clinical skincare space was both innovative in their approach and extremely traditional when it came to who they were serving. The target demographic for a typical brand that's medical grade is wealthy, informed, and white. But I knew I had to leave and partake in my own innovations when I slowly became less and less passionate about dermatological research. I remember my boss even asked me one time if I was even passionate about my job, which caused a lot of cognitive dissonance for me. But it had me thinking. Leaving this job meant forgoing my first job ever that I had worked so hard for. It meant that I was going to be living off of my savings for a while and that it would be rough. And it was. But it also meant that I finally had some creative freedom in how I could approach scientific discovery without an institution hanging over my head. And now I had freed 40 hours a week to do so. It meant that my 11-year-old self was finally going to get some answers. Serendipitously at this time, I had also acquired the Vanguard STEM Award to investigate some deep, burning questions that I had about darker skin. In a way, I knew that I had to let go of the institution that no longer served me at the moment in order to move closer to my passions. Today, I am the proud owner of a research and development lab that focuses on innovations prioritizing darker skin tones. I've worked with amazing brands from small businesses to a large corporate entity beyond my wildest dreams. And I can honestly say that the Vanguard STEM Award gave me the opportunity to really peel back the layers and employ creative methods to answer the question, how can a skincare product be developed to target skin conditions commonly encountered by dark-skinned individuals? This project made me realize that it's not skin research that I've been passionate about all along. It's skin research that benefits an extremely overlooked community, those with darker skin. It's the belief that skincare is healthcare, and that we have the access to this right just as much as everyone else does. My project revolved around hyperpigmentation for darker skin tones, and it was definitely the gateway into a wealth of knowledge that I am so grateful for. But the point is that this journey gave me the chance to do something that everyone told me didn't really matter. They told me it wasn't necessary, they told me it wasn't feasible, and they told me that it wasn't realistic. Everyone somehow told me that I should be doing something else. However, I can confidently say today that I absolutely love what I do. Skincare research is definitely my jam, especially when it revolves around darker skin. This area of research has become my life's work, and to be honest, I wouldn't have it any other way, and I can guarantee my 11-year-old self is super duper stoked. So I really think that in regards to all of this, everything has happened for a reason for sure. And I definitely look back on those times, being 11, having that prepubescent skin, and just tell myself, look at what we built. Thank you very much.
Wow. So much to unpack from that. One of my favorite parts, sorry, jumping right in because there was so much from that I loved. Shout out to you, AJ, for just pursuing your dreams. I want you to know that you have absolutely 100% made your 11-year-old self happy, my 11-year-old self happy. I really loved how you were like, you wanted to have the creative freedom without an institution hanging over your head to pursue your scientific creativity, because that's literally what this entire funding initiative was all about. We wanted people literally just like you who had and I think that you're a true, everyone in the hot science set, but I think that you especially, just in general, with all of the other things that you do, you really truly define a STEM creative, because you had all of these creative ideas that you weren't able to pursue in a institution, that you were like, you know what, I'm gonna go pursue them on my own. I think that's incredible.
Oh, thank you so much. That's really sweet. It couldn't have come at a more perfect time also. Yeah. So I am also super appreciative of y'all as well.
Of course. And I really like the note that you said, skincare is healthcare. And we have the right to that care as well. I think that there was an article that came out recently about how there are so few medical textbooks that literally have diseases in darker skin. So I think that not just this, but all of those other people emphasizing dark skin care really is so crucial as we begin to move forward in appreciating people of all different color skins.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, every single time I go to a conference or have a research presentation of anything of the sort, I feel like I always have to emphasize that, simply put, the skincare industry's innovation is just behind when it comes to us. And so that's essentially what this is all about.
Yeah. And I'm hoping, well, clearly through your company that you developed, okay, the biotech industry is only going to realize how important this is. So I'm really excited for your future. This is going to be amazing. And also you're about to be a PhD student, so that's awesome.
Yeah, that's yeah, we should talk.
Of course. So I guess your parents should be happy because you're going to be a doctor in some way, right?
You would think. You'd think so.
Well, I'm so happy for you.
Same here. Your story was incredible. We really loved it. And I think it really did. It was one of the stories that kind of touched on all of the main points of Hot Science Summer, of like the community that you're serving. Someone put in the chat, when an opportunity doesn't serve you, create one. And truly, I think that that's really what we were looking to do here with Hot Science Summer. So to see someone get their bag and move forward with that was really inspirational. And I think, you know, your story serves to empower people who are in those places, who know what they want to do, but can't do them where they are, that they can create those opportunities for themselves. And, you know, we're going to stick around and try to help folks continue to create those types of opportunities.
Yeah, please. I mean, it was literally the best thing that could have happened at that time. So again, thank you.
Thank you for conducting your research. It's amazing work. And I'm so excited to continue to watch you grow in your scientific journey.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Geraldine.
Hey, get it right, get it right. Thank you, AJ, so much for joining us here today. We're excited to see what you do moving forward. And as we mentioned at the last little commercial break, if you're looking to publish any of the work that you've done around Hot Science Summer, definitely let us know, and we can chat about how we can support you in putting your scientific expertise out in the world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Well, it was great to chat with you. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank y'all. Okay, I'm gonna, yeah. Okay.
Have a great one, AJ. Thank you so much.
Bye, y'all. Have a great night.
Yeah. All right.
My heart.
The show is coming to an end. How do you feel about that? How did you?
I'm actually sad that it's over. This has been so great. Am I going to rewatch this? 100%, because there were definitely stories that I was like, in my Rachel's story, I was trying to not cry. I'm not gonna lie, y'all. I was sitting here in my heart feels. It was pulling at my heartstrings, and how inspirational. Honestly, everybody's story, from how they were inspired to childhood and how they literally centered, every single person has centered their identity, their community in the research that they're doing. And it just goes to show that the intersection of scientific method, shout out to the paper that Vanguard STEM wrote, cough, cough.
You know, I got you right here with that intersectional scientific method. We've got it up and ready.
I was like, and you know, we're just here. We're at this point, we're just here. Like, are we twins at this point? Like, are you reading my mind? But it just goes to show how the intersectional scientific methodology really reigns true. Who you are and your experiences directly impact the type of science that you do, the type of science that you want to do, the type of science that you're passionate about. And I just think that is cool.
And I think also the key thing here that we were trying to overcome is that who you are can affect the type of science that you're able to do. So we really wanted to put in an effort to removing that barrier, at least when it comes to funding, which we know is often the largest barrier in scientific research. So that folks were not hindered by the structural things that get in the way of being able to do their science their way, as we catchphrased our Hot Science Summer. I was going to go into this intersectional scientific methodology, but I think you really just covered it with that. Intersectional scientific methodology is all about how who you are affects the science that you do at every single level. And we at Vanguard STEM believe that when we take into account your identity and the science that you're doing, it's really the most honest way to practice science. They say that scientists are objective and unbiased, but that's not true. We all observe from somewhere. And so the intersectional scientific methodology really takes into account where we're observing from, how we go about conducting that research, and what impact it has on us, our communities, or even just the scientific community and literature. So we hope that you guys were really able to see this play out in the projects that we supported through Hot Science Summer. Geraldine, where can they find us on social media?
I'm so glad that you asked. You could find us all over social media at Vanguard STEM. Had to throw the shirt out there.
We had to get it in.
You can find us everywhere: Twitter, Instagram, at Vanguard STEM. One word. So check us out. We love interacting with you guys. It's Pride Month, so happy Pride. And we also have our Queer Crush Wednesday. So if you know anybody that is an amazing scientist that identifies as queer, please nominate them. We also have our Women Crush Wednesday in STEM. So please nominate any women or even little girls of color in STEM. We are here to create and disseminate information that celebrates and highlights all of these folks. So
I got to write that down, the create and disseminate. You really got it. Oof. Okay, so the one other thing that we'll tell you is you can go to conversations.vanguardstem.com to read about all of these projects, about the struggles and successes that these folks in the Hot Science Set went through, and about all of our other community initiatives. So once again, that's conversations.vanguardstem.com. And it has been my pleasure to host and co-host, with the lovely Dr. Geraldine Ezeka.
It's been the sweetest pleasure to co-host with you, my dearest, almost Dr. Anika Harriet.
Soon come. All right. Thank you so much for being here with us today, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye, y'all.